So you have a bingo scorecard in front of you. How many can you get to call bingo? Here we go. You used the Dewey Decimal System. You had at least one phone or TV spliced into the main house line. You asked someone by note if they liked you with choices, yes or no. You sang "Here I Go Again" out loud while driving, unashamed. You had a Michael Jackson button or sticker. You had the Bic multicolor pen which gave you red, green, black, and blue choices. You made out at a school dance to Journey, REO Speedwagon, or Night Ranger. You had to pay long-distance calls on the family landline bill. You drank or smoked pot with your parents or friends' parents. You made a homemade bike ramp. You owned a Rubik's Cube. Your parents left you alone as kids without a babysitter. You owned a pair of Jordache, Sassoon, Calvin Klein, or Gloria Vanderbilt jeans. You had a Radio Shack car stereo and or installed it yourself. You had an Atari 2600. You ate What Killed Mikey. You saw the original Star Wars trilogy and its initial theater runs. You have photographic proof of you in parachute pants. You had a pizza delivered to your high school classroom. You know what kind of eggs were in Bubble Yum. You made a collect call. You used Aquanet or Sun-In, and it was in your bathroom. You wore underoos. You had a radar detector. You wore clogs shoes. That's your Gen X bingo card. Introduction. X is the lost generation. We're nestled between the self-important boomers who thought they were going to change the world and the millennials and zoomers who thought they were owed it. Born in the late 60s, we came of age in the 80s and were the latchkey kids, the children of divorce who knew how to make ourselves something when mom got home and eked out a place of our own with TV, video games, MTV, and movies. I lived a John Hughes life in high school. The director and writer who gave us films that created a whole subgenre, the 80s teen comedy, and that subgenre was an uncanny reflection of my own social evolution. Does it just seem that way? I was Anthony Michael Hall's Farmer Ted from 16 Candles in elementary and middle school. I was the quick-witted geek who would sell his soul for a girl's attention and remained in that role until the start of high school, evolving into Hall's weird science Gary Wallace with a touch of John Cusack's Lane Meyer for good measure. I graduated a mutt of those characters. A Little Risky Business Joel Goodson, Star Trek's James T. Kirk, Gary from The Last American Virgin, Ferris Bueller, and Brad Hamilton from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Stand By Me ends with a quote that resonates. I never had any friends later on like the ones I had when I was 12. While it comes from a boomer film, it applies really to any generation. When I talked about the 80s, when I taught the decade as a former high school history teacher, I told the stories of these friends, who at the time of this writing are starting to leave the building. I have now reached the point in my life where films no longer say, sometimes you just gotta say what the fuck to illustrate my life. They now say, we seem to have reached the age where life stops giving us things and starts taking them away. From Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, a mess of a film that reminded Generation X that you can't go home again. Movies were the backdrop to my life, and it was what I was known for in high school. I always drew comparisons to film, used them as examples, and even got away with showing them in class. I started making movies with my friends in 8th grade and never stopped. Jaws was the movie that made me want to make movies after seeing it on the big screen in 1975. From there, I wrote stories, books, and scripts. My uncle got me a Super 8mm silent movie camera when I was 12, and I was on my way. At the center of it all were my class of 1985 friends, and they elected me their president at the end of our sophomore year, 1983, and my life changed forever. This book is a Valentine to those kids. I am still in close touch with a number of them because they
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.